911, what's the address of your emergency?
My dad's beating my mom.
Is that your mother screaming in the background?
Yeah. They just tried to choke me.
This is not the first time.
Get away from me! No, no!
Any weapons in the home?
They're in the grave room.
Are you coming soon?
Yes, honey, they're coming, okay?
Do you want me to talk to him? I want to help you. It's not okay. No, it's not helping me. Nothing helps me.
Hello? Hello?
I just shot my wife.
You just shot your wife?
Yes.
Is she still breathing?
No.
I met him actually through my friend. We just liked each other from the first time we met. This was something about him. He was passionate, he was affectionate. You know, he loved to cuddle, you know, but he had a temper. After I had my third child, the violence after that really escalated. Then I thought if we get married, I said, oh yeah, I'm gonna be his wife, so no, he ain't gonna beat me now. But it's like, it really got worse because he felt like he owned me. I really went through it. I done had broken nose, dislocated shoulder. I got drugged. I got spit on. I got kicked. One time, out of nowhere, a fist just came and hit me right across my nose, and blood just flew all over. My face was disfigured. Both of my eyes was black. It's like when he get angry, he black out. He don't see nobody. He don't hear nobody. He just wanted me to feel pain. I can't even remember how many times that I called the police. He never stood over a day in jail for that. Never.
Domestic violence impacts millions of Americans every year. In the most severe cases, it can be fatal. 3 women are killed by an intimate partner every day on average. Some law enforcement agencies are trying to prevent those homicides by intervening earlier.
He strangled her with both of his hands around her neck. He took out a gun, and then he put the gun to her head.
This task force of lawyers, advocates, and police officers is focused on tracking and seizing firearms from those who have domestic violence protection orders filed against them. That's because an abuser's access to guns increases the risk of homicide by 500%.
I have reached out to our crime scene analysis people to make sure that if we serve the search warrant, that we have adequate resources to get everything out of there.
You may be seated.
We're walking into a court hearing right now where a judge is going to determine whether a number of domestic violence suspects have to surrender their firearms. There are 24 that she's going to rule on today.
This is the hearing to make sure that they have complied with either surrendering their weapons or filing a declaration of non-surrender saying that they don't have any firearms or access to any firearms.
Have you had an opportunity to look at your order to surrender weapons, sir?
Yes, ma'am. I actually filed that yesterday.
On April 30th, 2018, you signed a declaration of non-surrender. Do you remember doing that, sir?
Yeah, I don't have any weapons.
Is this your signature here, sir?
Yeah.
While in custody, Officer Nichols reported a statement. I'm going to blast that motherfucking apartment. I don't have a permit, but that doesn't mean I don't carry. Prior to this position, I was a trial attorney, did domestic violence cases. And so I dealt with the aftermath. The incident had already happened. Now the team has the opportunity to act before that something happens.
Once an order to surrender has been issued, it's up to Sergeant Dorothy Kim and her unit to recover the weapons.
We recovered more firearms in the first quarter of this year than we did in all of 2016.
So all of these firearms are from DV situations?
Yes, domestic violence protection orders where the respondent is known to have firearms.
Have you received any orders to surrender today?
Yeah, so I ran the respondent's history, and he has no criminal history, but he does have 2 firearms in his purchase history, and he also has a concealed pistol license.
Why did this victim file for a protection order?
The relationship had ended, and for economic reasons, they were still living together. And from what I gather, he's become a little bit more scary to her.
It looks like that should just pop open. Got it.
The woman in this case was granted a temporary protection order, alleging that her partner threatened her and she was hoping to fully separate.
When a victim is most likely to be assaulted or killed is during the 90 days during the breakup. And I feel like this is one thing that we are doing to help prevent that.
2 weeks later, the woman in this case had a court hearing to extend her protection order. We caught up with her to find out how it went.
So how did the hearing go?
The judge said that the threats and the physical intimidation with his body wasn't enough for me to get a protection order. So he has his AR-15 back. It just feels like the system doesn't care unless it's already too late.
Many women describe feeling isolated by the legal system. Survivors often don't report, and when they do, 1 in 3 women say they feel less safe after calling the police. Some legislators are taking a different approach.
Survivors of domestic violence can now carry a firearm without a license.
Most recently, Indiana passed HB 1071, a bill that allows people who file a protection order to carry a weapon without a permit for 60 days.
Ladies, welcome to Watson Chambers Defense Institute. My name is Tammy Watson, and I'm going to be your instructor tonight. Your mind is like a hard drive, and tonight you're going to open that "How do I keep myself safe" folder.
Former State Trooper Tammy Watson is the lead firearm instructor here. She works mostly with women.
So you've gone through the first 2-step classes. We've learned grip, we've learned sight alignment, and we've learned trigger press. You have a list of firearms. You're going to start with one particular gun, and then you're going to move down your list.
Tammy testified in favor of Indiana's bill.
As a former police officer, you know how important law enforcement is in this country. So why is this bill necessary?
There's the saying going around, I carry a gun because a police officer won't fit in my bag. Firearms are part of the entire domestic violence discussion, good and bad. We try to give women the opportunity to make themselves less of a target and a victim.
Do you ever have women come in who start to talk about their domestic violence situation?
Absolutely. To be honest, that's why I do a ladies-only class. It is for women, by women. Ladies, that's how your gun functions. You can do this. And stick with me long enough, I'll have you shooting like a boss.
Michelle says it took years before she was able to leave an abusive partner. She now encourages other women to train.
So it started off with a lot of the brainwashing, making me believe that no one wanted me. And then the last 5 years was a lot of the physical. That's where he would start using handguns and other means of violence like choking, pulling my hair out, throwing me down the stairs. It was crazy for me because I worked in law enforcement, so I seen it every day, and I still didn't want to believe that it was actually happening to me. After I had left, he had showed up at my apartment. He held me at knife point, and he had threatened to slit my throat. And I called dispatch. The officer that arrived had known his family for years. The officer said, "You might as well just keep your mouth shut because I'm not reporting this." And he goes, "And I'll never disrespect his family."
There's a recent bill that makes it easier for people with protection orders to get permission to carry a firearm. What do you think about that?
I'm all for it because I think that we need to have more protection for people like us that are abused because sometimes law enforcement's not always there to help us.
But arming yourself can come with consequences. Access to a gun is consistently linked to an increased risk of homicide, even more so for women than men.
Finger off the trigger.
Even still, Dawn got to the point where she felt she had nothing left to lose after a man she had dated began relentlessly stalking her.
I will fucking kill you. I'll fucking kill your family. I'll kill your fucking favorite pet. I will fucking kill you.
After I got this phone call, I was a wreck. And I kept asking the police, well, are you going to be at my house tonight? It was so distressing.
What did they say?
Call us if you need us.
Eventually, Dawn not only bought a gun, but started a business, producing bags designed for women like her who want to conceal carry.
Were you a gun person before this? Like, did you grow up with them?
Guns were not in my world at all. I had never shot a gun. I never considered owning a firearm, but I needed something where I could walk out of my house and not feel like today's the day.
At least 6 other states have similar laws, and they're widely promoted by pro-gun organizations as empowering survivors. However, they're extremely controversial among domestic violence experts.
The presence of guns makes domestic violence so much more potentially lethal. So in homes where there's a gun, women are 5 times more likely to be killed. And that's just a ridiculous number.
But what do you do if you're a survivor who is being threatened and you feel like you need a gun in order to defend yourself?
I can completely understand that instinct that says, I need this gun to make myself safer. And I know women who are sitting in jail right now because in a struggle, not even that they pulled the gun and volitionally shot, but their partners ended up dead and nobody cared. Having that kind of law just gives you the false security of thinking, I have this to protect me and anybody's gonna think that it's okay. And people pay for it with the rest of their lives.
So why not try to educate judges and prosecutors and the people who could change the legal system?
We've tried for the last 40 years, and we haven't made fundamental change. You kind of have these images of victimization that cast victims as kind of white, straight, middle class, weak, meek, and passive. And that point at which you fight back, then you're an angry woman, then you're a scorned woman, but you are no longer a victim of violence. Rape, sexual assault, domestic violence, we have the same problem across all of these domains, that it's women making claims about being abused, and we don't want to believe those claims.
I was a wreck. My life had started to crumble and I was just miserable. I didn't know too much about domestic violence or anything, so I never really sought help. I always ran to my grandmother. And the last time, before she passed, she had tears in her eyes. She said, baby, you got to get out. She said, somebody's gonna get hurt.
On March 30th, 2005, Katina shot and killed her husband during an altercation. He died within minutes. She was charged with second-degree murder.
I was sentenced to life in prison. I couldn't think. I barely was breathing because I'm about to leave my kids for the rest of my life. I'll never see the outside again.
In Katina's case, the evidence of abuse presented didn't sway the jury's decision. Her current lawyer, Kristen DeNicholas, has argued that that's because her first trial was deeply flawed.
The errors were extremely grave. For instance, when they were selecting a jury, one of the questions asked of potential jurors was, would you hold it against Katina for staying in the relationship? And a lot of the jurors, the potential jurors, said, yeah, I think we would hold that against her. No attorney ever took the initiative to get any kind of psychological assessment. An expert can help explain a lot of things that are kind of counterintuitive for the average person.
The Supreme Court of Louisiana agreed. Earlier this year, they threw out her conviction and life sentence, ruling that an expert's testimony might have changed the verdict. After serving 11 years in prison, Katina is free on bail while she waits for a new trial.
I'm just taking every day one at a time, living life, enjoying life, and enjoying this freedom, trying to get back to the Katina I used to be.